Introduction. According to Crane and Osolo, research methodology is a guide for researchers to achieve their research. It is a framework based on an existing theory which is related and reflects with the hypothesis of a study. A research framework provides structure or fundamental model to support our collective research. It can be more meaningful and acceptable to the theoretical construct in the research field. On this era, science education is very important. All researchers must be applied and take note about research framework, especially researchers' education of science. It is because they must do many investigation and research framework is one of it. If they lack knowledge about this main topic and methods, it will be challenging for them in the future. As a researcher, we must approach and request for more research and exploration as part of activities.
I will talk about developing research framework. Developing research framework can be divided into two ways, inductive and deductive. Sometimes, researchers use inductive way where they survey literature, identify individual components, and divide it to generate related maps between individual components. In the research framework context, an individual component can be included previous studies which explore the same phenomenon in a different context. That means researchers identify the individual component in developing research framework to find patterns from previous studies and develop a theoretical explanation from the patterns. Through the inductive approach, researchers can use the way to develop research framework to make inference about possible outcome with specific research context. Besides, with the deductive approach, researchers develop hypotheses based on all theories and they strategize research to test the hypothesis. For the first time, researchers identify pre-exciting research framework from literature used in the same research. Researchers will conduct a systematic literature survey. Devi and Rohata 2016 suggests that researchers should identify, choose, and critically value literature as a way of responding to a specific literature review focused in a systematic literature review survey. Next, I will talk about application of research framework. After creating the conceptual framework, theoretical framework, and contextual framework, the researcher will then go on to add new knowledge to the research framework, which might support or refute previously held knowledge or offer fresh insight. The primary goal of the research is to answer a question, test a theory, or develop a hypothesis for additional study. This indicates that the primary goal of the research investigation should take the contribution to the research framework into account. The researcher process that collects and analyzes data to determine whether the evidence support a hypothesis is to test a hypothesis.
The framework in education research. Framework of constructs. According to Maxwell, the conceptual framework is a form of assumptions, expectations, beliefs, and theories that support the conceptual. The amendment explained that the conceptual framework instead of the theoretical framework. Eminda states that a conceptual framework can be used instead of a theoretical framework. As such, they both imply that the conceptual framework and the theoretical framework are similar. According to Samsuri, 2008 states that the conceptual framework in research should be clear and the lack of clarity of the concept in research will give rise to a different understanding of perception with the researcher's intention. A theoretical framework. A theoretical framework, which is also understood as an opinion that has been tested for truth in depth, is needed by researchers as a general support. Theories or principles can be found in the form of books, documents, and articles. Theory is used to explain the situation in depth by using previous research source in research. The purpose of a theoretical framework is to expand a situation that can be studied through accepted scientific methods. It can also be used to define observation protocols, measurements, and inform the interpretation of results to conclude findings. Next, contextual framework. This synthesis is usually used as a literature review to find and explore substantive findings in the field as well as theoretical and methodological contributions to a specific topic. A contextual framework can be defined as a review, critique, and distinctive concept of existing knowledge in which hypothesis and thesis statement. Wilkinson's 1999, where the contextual approach is based on the context that will allow students to use past knowledge to produce meaningful learning. In the contextual framework, the researcher can make research to get confirmation. If there is a contradiction, to know what is being investigated and why it needs to be investigated and how it needs to be investigated based on selected research. This conceptual framework is very important to make it easier for students to understand something clearly apart from conducting research using their other sources.
After all, we can conclude the importance of research framework. The researcher emphasizes that elements other than the research approach could make the findings invalid and inaccurate. Hence, it requires the use of a systematic process in the development of all research elements. It was also stated that the steps taken during the research will be practiced using the research framework. Commonly, researchers use it as a guide to help them narrow the scope of their research. It is because, from the beginning, we can see how frameworks in educational research is organized into three frameworks, which is first, conceptual framework, second, theoretical framework, third, contextual framework. For conceptual framework, based on the scholar has said that research is supported and influenced by the system of concepts, assumptions, expectations, beliefs, and theories. To roughly envision a theoretical framework, it is essentially a group of interrelated concepts, definitions, and propositions that provide a systematic understanding of a phenomenon by outlining the relationships between variables, while contextual framework, produced from a review of academic literature as a thorough synthesis of current knowledge on a particular subject. Everything has been thoroughly explained above. There are also two main approaches to developing research frameworks, which is inductive and deductive. The process of inductive is basically from specific to the general in order to arrive at a conclusion, whilst deductive contrasted with it. Last but not least, as stated by the author, implementing those techniques mentioned in the whole article will give researchers a picture of their study frameworks in a systematic way, which could improve the authenticity and accuracy of their findings.